Let's change the topic. Let's talk about FSD 12.4. It's being released now to employees, and I think there's at least one employee who posted one video. We don't know if that's credible, but it looks like that it was absolutely credible. And we've not seen it, gone beyond the employees, nor has it gone public yet. Are you guys thinking that it's been delayed? And is this a big deal, especially since, it may not be as a big deal if 12.4 was such a big leap compared to 12.3. Omar, I know you just spoke, but can you give us your update on what you're thinking?
Yeah, I have seen some very angry comments. FSG 12.4 was supposed to expand to some customers over the weekend. That hasn't happened yet. I would just say take deep breaths. These things can happen time to time. I've been following these updates for years. They very rarely show up on time. So at this point, if you're expecting it to show up on time, you're the stupid one. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So, it happens. It's a couple days late. What are you going to do? Roll out a software that has some issue because it needs to be on time? It doesn't need to be on time. It needs to not be unsafe. So I'm sure that it's going to come out pretty soon. And from what I've heard from employees, not having the nag is just incredible. It says on the top, attention monitoring activated, and then you can just not touch the wheel. You can go hands free. I mean, it's a huge moment for FSD, and I think people are really going to love it. There's some other stuff that's hidden in there too. The release notes, they've started watermarking the VIN of the car on top of the release notes for employee cars so that nobody can leak what's in these release notes. So I think we're seeing the spring update go out with 12.3.6. We're going to see 12.4 go out. It's going to be slow. First, it's going to go out to the early access people, maybe your Chuck Cooks, your dirty Teslas, people like that. It's going to slowly go out to more people. And in the coming weeks, it'll start going out to everybody. So get comfortable with 12.3.6, relax, enjoy it. And when 12.4 is ready, it'll be out. And I think it's going to be a huge moment to get rid of the nag.
Omar, are you expecting actual Smart Summon and Banish to appear in 12.4?
I'd say it's 50-50. We have seen tweets from Elon saying Smart Summon and Banish are coming soon. I know that employees have been testing actually Smart Summon and Banish since 12.3. So it's been in employees' hands for a while. It could be that it's making it out, and that could be part of the reason that they are stamping the watermark on the release notes and not letting anyone leak what's in there, because it has actually Smart Summon and Banish. And that could be pretty huge if it does, because we'd get to see our Tesla operate driverlessly in the parking lot for the first time. So that's going to be super exciting, whether it's 12.4 or 12.4 per point something or 12.5.
Yeah. Warren?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Omar. There was a while back Elon had commented that 12.4 really should be version 13 or 12.5 should be version 14. Could you comment on what you see as your guesses as what might a version 13 add, or a version 4? What's the future of FSD a year or two from now when we get to version 13 or version 14? What in your wildest dreams gets included, and how is it different from what we see now in V12?
FSD 13, I think, is probably FSD plus Grok. Combine those two together, and you get a next level system that takes miles per intervention to even another level that the current architecture couldn't take.
And you can give it voice commands, and it understands a wide variety of voice commands instead of just, open butthole.
I imagine that you would be able to talk to it. You'd probably be able to say things like, "Hey, can you drive a little bit slower? There's a huge speed bump in the road coming up." And it always kind of makes me spill my coffee or whatever. Or you can say, "Hey, there's a huge pothole on Oak Street. Can we take Bush Street instead?" And simple voice prompts like that, it should actually be able to understand and respond to them.
Do you think there might be a version, or this might be part of a version, where the cars start mapping the roads and identifying, hey, this road changed and updating the map, or hey, there's a pothole here, everybody should avoid it. The I think he mentioned something about, when
They're
a
already
street is
doing that in the 12 series.
okay.
Like you mentioned, for example, on 12.5, they're working on narrow roads where there's a road closed sign and they need to communicate up that it's closed so that other Teslas don't come and block the street. So you've been seeing this for some time. They've been doing it for rough roads to adjust the air suspension, and they're communicating more and more stuff to each other over the internet.
Okay. We have new speakers on the stage. Scott, did you have a question or comment?
No, but I think I have a quick point here is that if you have a really good speech interface, you don't need controls. You don't need a steering wheel. You don't need accelerators. Basically, what Omar was saying is, speed bump, slow down, or speed up a little bit. Or if you get into some situation where the car's kind of stuck and doesn't know what to do, you don't have to drive it out of it. You just kind of talk it out of it. You say, oh, just back up a little bit and get a little bit of room, move to the left. Maybe that's why they're so insistent on getting rid of the steering wheel and the controls, because the speech interface is the control.
Yeah, exactly. I think speech and touchscreen is going to be the answer for the robotaxi we see on 8.8. So on 8.8, they're going to give us a demo of a driverless ride. It won't have any steering wheel or pedals. And if you look at, like, for example, Waymo's remote intervention interface, they just released a blog post about this. And the way they do it is they just ask a question to the remote operator. Is the road closed? Is the lane blocked? And it's like a multiple choice answer. Well, imagine you can just do that on the touch screen of the car or have a remote operator do that. And that's really all you need to control the car. Or in some advanced cases, they kind of show where they want the car to be positioned with their computer screen. And then the car does that. So I think Scott's exactly right. Voice plus just using the touch screen can actually replace the controls once the AI gets good enough.
You have to be careful. You just don't have somebody like in the passenger seat, shouting weird stuff out and controlling the car. But yeah,
Well, you need a good
it's
LLM
interesting.
that's able to sort of distinguish stuff like that, and that it's the captain of the
Yeah.
ship, right? So it knows what's going on, and if the backseat driver is giving like ridiculous commands, it just ignores it. So it only does something in safety related, and that might be what 13 does. It starts to bring us into us being able to kind of talk our way through lane changes and simple things like that to start testing this out.
Yeah,
You're going to
you
need a
can see
watchword, though, for sure. I don't think that the idea it's just going to monitor in cabin discussions is realistic for an early phase.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more of a long-term thing, but I would imagine it kind of even being able to differentiate between voices and also look at the command and not just follow it, but understand if it's a command that makes sense, if it's safe to do, and use its own judgment. Much like you can see LLMs have these sort of reasoning capabilities, you'd want the same sort of capabilities for an in-car model.
Yeah, the situation would be the car is like, oh crap, I'm stuck. Human, can you kind of talk me through what I should do here right now? And so that would be basically when it decides to listen to you. Otherwise, it ignores you completely.
Interesting. Any other comments on 12.4 and kind of where we see it going? Obviously, you'd probably have another 12.5 and 12.6 behind it. June, July. It seems like there's a cadence that's starting to form. And I don't know if there's any other comments on that, or should we switch to another topic?
I have a quick question slash comment. Earlier, it's been said that
Go.
there are some branches of some people don't have FSD that have paid for it because they're on an older branch. I shouldn't say FSD. They don't have 12.3.6, which would put them in line to get 12.4 when it comes out. Omar or whoever, or Scott, can you kind of update all of us? And are all branches on 12.36 now, or is there still a disparity there?
Everybody's getting updated to 12. If you have 11, you're getting 12 with the spring update right now. So that's being taken care of. They need to roll these updates out over time to make sure things are safe. So it's unfortunate, but it's just part of making sure that the release process works well.
Yeah, my X has 12, but my Y has 11 and has not gotten the update.
Yeah, you'll probably get the spring update any day now or any minute now. It started going out today to people on version 11.
Have you noticed nobody talks about hardware 3 and hardware 4
Why
anymore?
did you let your X say? Yeah, why did you let your X yourself?
I'm sorry, you broke up. What was the question?
No,
He was
it's just my
making it.
snarky pun. You said my X had 0.6 or 1236. I was like, well, why did you let your X take it? I would have kept it for myself.
Actually, my X owns the Y. So it's
Oh,
all different.
here, keep it confusing.
Good
Yeah.
job.
Hey, Warren,
What-
quick answer to Warren's question. I think it is awesome that no one's worried about 12.3 versus 12.4. It is kind of a
Hardware 3.
hardware 3 versus hardware 4. It is kind of a bummer that you have to have a late 2019 model to get, to make sure that you have hardware 3. But as long as you do, then you're really set for this awesome version of FSD that's out now.
The good news is Intel Atom customers can take advantage of 0.99% financing through the end of the week on a new Tesla.
There was a guy named Will, I think, on X who previously was an autopilot FSD tester with Tesla. And he's saying that he was expecting 12.4 already to come out, but because it's been delayed, that might be an indicator that we are no longer in the March of Nines. And I know you kind of answered that earlier, Omar. You're saying that's ridiculous if you're expecting it to come. This is quite common for them to be very always be a little bit delayed. They're working on certain smaller reasons why. Any comment about this thing where if it was released last week, then that means that they're really on this exponential curve, but because it's been a week, they're 2 weeks delayed, that means they're not.
Yeah, I'll comment on it. Pure software, pure sprint. There's a big difference when having a regular sprint cycle, say it's weekly, which is what I think is happening internally. They're having weekly sprint cycles. And when the release happens and what's included in the release, they're separate.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, we don't even,
for that.
we're just speculating. We don't even know what's happening. It could be something going on with the build. It could be something that they spotted in QA that's related to how it was integrated. We don't know what's happening. So, I think these things are, if you've ever worked in this environment, they're a little bit difficult to pin down to the day. But if there's going to be some variance based on kind of the undertaking. That's what model are they? I mean, what what pattern? Like, what are you comparing it to exactly? Would be my question to those that have that question. Like, what's the reference that you're comparing it to? I'd love to understand that. But yeah, there's going to be inherent variation in this. If it's months and months and months, well then yeah, I think you could question, are you on track or not? If it's days or a week, I would say largely on plan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure this comment really makes sense. Obviously, the March of Nines is just the reliability of different tasks improving over time. If it shows up a few days late, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world and nothing's working. But I mean, these things are difficult to get out and validate and to make sure they're safe. And if you finish it and there's a problem, you got to go back and you got to fix the problem. And there's no shortcut there. So, I mean, you can just look at Elon's statements where he said, we plan to have a major version out every 2 weeks for the next month or something like that. And they haven't even gotten the first major release out. So, no, it's not on time, but it's never been on time. Almost any release, I can struggle to think of one that showed up the first day we expected it. So I'm not judging based on when it appears. Obviously, it exists. There's thousands of people who have it and are using it. They're just all Tesla employees. So at the time that they choose to release it to us and let us see, we'll see if it's good or bad. And that's not going to be based on what day it's released. I mean, it could be released right after this or tomorrow. We don't know. But it's not really the point when it is released. The point is, how good is it? If it's really delivering a significant miles per intervention increase, nobody's going to care whether it came on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday.
Omar, you just said that thousands of employees are testing it right now. Do we know that for sure? And if so, then why do we only have one video that's come out from FSD 12.4?
Well, because anybody who posts a video gets fired. So yeah, we do know for sure that the Wave 1 received it on Friday. And there's thousands of employees included in the Wave 1 group, even a service center employee or a sales employee. But as I said, they're now watermarking the release notes with the VIN. And they've communicated very clearly to people, look, if you post videos of pre-release software, especially given that the cars have actually smart summon, and that's not released yet, you will be fired. So if you post a video, you're going to be fired. That guy who posted the video, I bet you he's probably already been fired. So they're being extremely strict about this. Your Dan O'Dowds of the world are looking for every excuse they have to smear them and say, this is dangerous, this is unsafe. It's not surprising that we're not seeing much out there, but I mean, it looks just like 12.3 for the most part. There isn't really a lot of difference. You might see somebody using it and not even realize there's a difference, but it's definitely on thousands of employee cars for the Wave 1.
I had a question for you guys, Homars or the rest, is regarding, I'm blown away with the improvements that I'm seeing in FSD up in Montreal, but there's one aspect that I'm wondering, is this a location issue, a hardware issue, or a software issue? Could it be solved? I've got a Model X Plaid with the hardware 3, haven't experienced 4 yet, and the issue is things on roads, and so it's whenever there's a speed bump that's not indicated, but the big one today, I was driving and there was a road sign that had fallen over on the road. I've noticed it doesn't pick up potholes. Maybe you guys have discussed this before, but potholes, things that are left on the road, dead animals. Do you think that that's a hardware issue, a software issue, or a location issue?
I think it's going to handle all of those things, and it's going to handle them much better than a human can. So it's going to be able to see, any sort of obstacles or potholes on the road. And I think the cars are going to be able to communicate with each other over the internet. So one car will see a pothole. It'll let the server know. You'll be driving down the road, see your car change lanes and say, oh, why did it change lanes? Then you'll see the big pothole in the lane you were in just a few minutes ago. And you'll never experience a pothole. As a matter of fact, you'll probably forget potholes exist. So it's going to be able to do all of these things in time. But there's challenges to all of them, right? You want to avoid obstacles in the road, but you don't want to be swerving wildly for every stick that is in the street, right? So it's very tough to strike that balance.
Do you think that'll be fixed with 13, in your opinion?
I mean, I have no idea, but I would expect every release to get better.
Go ahead, Sat. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. For Simon's question, I think it's partly location and data driven too, because when I drive in LA, when there's like a slope, it's kind of like a ditch. It would slow down for me. So, I mean, the prior, I think it was before V11, it didn't do that. So, and I usually go to the same areas, right? Go to the gym, wherever you go work or the shop, it's like the same place. So I think it's a matter of time if it's not in your location or if it's not happening for you. I think it's a matter of time it will. But for me, it slows down. If there's like a slope going down, I was like, well, why is it slowing down? I don't see anybody, no cars, no humans. And I realized, oh, there's a ditch there. So for me, it works and it notices those nuances of the street.
It can recognize dips, but it's not 100%. So you're starting to see it do these things. I've sometimes see it slow down and avoid potholes, but there's a lot more work to do. And it sounds like the 12.4 release that should be going out this week is going to be a big improvement in terms of miles per intervention.
Okay. So Simon, as a portfolio manager, right? And we've had you on speaker here every week, the last couple of weeks now. You hold 300,000 Tesla shares on behalf of wealthy families. How are you communicating the progress of FSD to your, to your base? I'm certain, I'm guessing that 90+% have no idea it can even do anything. Are you having regular meetings? Are you telling them that this is one of their investment thesis?
We are, and thanks for pointing that out. This is a few hours a week I take my kids to swim lessons. I'm sitting in the basement of the Delta, watching my kids, and I get to come on here and listen to you guys. And I wanted to say first of all is that the content I get from this group is phenomenal. I have access to Goldman, Stanley, all the top banks. We read all of the research, the good and the bad, and I still find just the biggest wealth of knowledge is coming from the retail investors that are creating these spaces. So my hat goes off to you guys first and foremost. In terms of talking to clients, there's interesting anecdote. Is I got a call from a client today, and he said, "Hey, listen, we've got another dividend coming in from the corporation. It's another $500,000. Do your thing." And however, can you not invest more money in Tesla? And I thought about this is somebody who owns a number of Subaru dealerships, and it's interesting to hear that perspective, is because their take is that their clients don't want EVs. And he said he's argued with me a few times, and he says, "Listen, I've talked to other dealerships, and they it's not growing. People don't want EVs, and so he's really concerned." So despite we're in this space and we see that this year is the future and this is like a no-brainer to us, but there are many intelligent business folks, and he's not against EVs. He just wants to sell his vehicles. So we do get pushback still. I mean, this is an extreme case where we have somebody that's selling EVs, and he said, "Listen, we went and bought the new Subaru EV, trying it. It's great, but this is the issue I have. This is the issue I have." And I said, go buy a Tesla and try it, and then come back to me and tell me that these things don't work. And he's like, "I can't do that. I own Subaru dealerships." I'm like, okay. And it's just night and day. And I'm trying to think of ways that I can explain it to our client base, and I'm still trying to figure it out. How do we explain to people what happens when robo-taxis are legit, probably licensed in China first, and full self-driving becomes a norm? And I'm just thinking of, if Apple were selling iPhones, and I'm thinking of ways that I can articulate to our client base. So back to your question, Herbert, is how do we tell people how impressive it is? Yes, I'm telling them. Yes, I go on the call and I say, you have no idea. I drive out of my driveway. It's, Friday night, and we're in January, and we're going to the ski hill, and it's a 2-hour drive away. And I put my drive in FSD, and it gets me door to door from our Westmount home to our Tremblant chalet, and I did not have to intervene. And to me, this blows my mind. And tumbleweeds. Jeff?
Yeah, okay.
Hey, Simon. Thanks for the comments too on the kind of the spaces and so forth. Have you ever discussed the concept of Net Promoter Score with some of like this person, for example? It's a measure of the referral rate of people that have actually bought and owned the product. And Tesla as a brand and as a product, the individual products score higher than any other automobile made. And so this whole concept of like, hey, I tried the Subaru EV and whatever, it has these problems. The people that buy Teslas have the highest rate of of promoting them and referring them to others who haven't bought it and would buy it again. I don't know if that's helpful information. That there's public information out there about the Net Promoter Score that may be helpful.
You're right. I've shared that with people. It kind of goes, yeah, it goes over their head until they've experienced it. I just find it mind blowing. Look at the percentage of people that buy a Tesla and that don't buy another product after that. Why aren't people paying attention to that? I don't know, but I repeat it. I said, go buy one and watch what happens. And every person that I know, but the joke at my office is a client calls and says, look, I'm going to buy a car, this. And they're like, oh no, Simon's going to sell them another Tesla. And at the end of the day, they end up getting a Tesla. And then they call me later and thank me. And they're like, wow, that's the best experience ever. And no, I've never sent them any referral codes, but I probably should have over the years. But yeah, Jeff, it's a good point. You and I understand this. I actually was in the auto industry 20 years ago before getting into finance, so I understand the auto industry. And Net Promoter Score is really important in that industry when you're in it. I don't know if it's that important to people outside of the industry.
Interesting. All right.
Omar?
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, recommending Teslas, they're such great products, affordable, fast, fun, safe, high tech. People always do come back and thank you. But in terms of your Subaru dealer client, I would tell them this: look, you are the guy who I would recommend the Tesla stock to more than anybody. Because assuming these, maybe you're right, and they'll only sell these things in China, they're not really going to catch on much in the US. But if you're wrong, and this transition happens sooner than expected, people are moving to EVs, people are moving to autonomous cars, you're going to want to have Tesla in your portfolio as a hedge, essentially. If times are tough, it might come in handy. Because the reality is, if you're a Subaru dealer, and this is kind of a hard reality that we have to face and plan for, nobody's buying a self-driving car from an auto dealership. So what does the auto dealership really look like in the future? It probably becomes much more service-oriented.
I like your soft take to it. Mine was a bit harsher a year ago, and sort of my take was, listen, you need to think that this Subaru is not going to exist by the end of the decade, and you need to look at selling these dealerships, though they're money makers. But the margins are going to come down. So
I mean, I agree with you. I was just trying to put
it
it gently because I wouldn't want to offend the client.
Yeah. I think he wasn't offended by it, but I think your gentle take on it is actually much better in terms of, listen, just hedge. There's a small position in your portfolio. At the end of the day, at the end of his email, he said, listen, at the end of the day, do whatever you need to do with the money. I trust you. You've done well for me. But the Tesla, of all our 30 companies we own, Tesla's the only one we've lost money on, for clients in the last 3-4 years. And so it's difficult, but that's not to say I'm concerned about it. We've just kept buying down, and this is a company that just keeps growing and expanding their actual business, and eventually the market will catch up to it, and Wall Street will be caught offside. Very similar to what we're seeing with NVIDIA today. They just keep getting caught offside, and everybody's trying to understand the value of the company. And I really believe that will be the case. I don't know if it's next year, the year after that, but as long as we continue to see Tesla execute, that's really all that matters. Until they stop executing, I don't think we should change our thesis.
So, Simon, one of the greatest assets we've got with the Tesla community is Gary Black. He's been representing the institutional portfolio manager, and he says things that are very different than what you say, right? So he would say that at some point he sees, autonomy to be commodity. Everybody will have it. He thinks that you really can't forecast this until it's out being sold. Until then, he's not going to put a lot to it except for the FSD take rate. That's really the only thing. How do you think differently than he does? Because he has been representing institutional investors and portfolio managers for us. Now you're a new voice. How are you different than the way he thinks?
I don't know about trying to differentiate. I have looked into Gary, his holdings, and his analysis, and I just look at what are the holdings, what are the weightings, and our belief is we try to the higher conviction names that we think have the highest potential of return over the next 3 to 5 years. We try to lean into those positions. So I've looked, and we all know he's had his highest position has been Google the last number of years. And I kind of looked at that analysis, and we've had a very high position in Google as well. And then I look at all the other names in his portfolio, and I've done the same thing with ARK Invest. I'm not taking away the research that ARK does. I'm not taking away the research that Gary does, but I am looking at what is Gary looking at. Why does he choose to have Google as his top holding? And I believe when he's talking about Tesla's valuation, he's just looking at the next few quarters in terms of what Wall Street is going to analyze the earnings at, because he constantly comes back to this. Here's what Bloomberg has. Bloomberg, the consensus of 30 analysts is this is what they're. I'm still there, Herbert?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear
Hello?
you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Keep going.
Sorry, I thought I got kicked off. And so he's looking at what is the consensus on Wall Street. I haven't heard him discuss I don't know if you call it fundamentals, but the factors that are driving the company. He's only looking at earnings. I don't know I'm trying to articulate it, but when we look at a company, we say, what's the product that they make? Are they killing their market? Are they losing market share, gaining market share? In Tesla, you can argue, we've heard it say, well, they're losing market share. No, they're not. They're actually gaining market share on the automobile industry. Stop thinking that it's just EVs and ICE vehicles. So they're gaining market share every year, and they're stealing it from the likes of BMW and Mercedes and Audi. They're eating their lunch. So I don't see that as an issue, and we haven't seen that all of a sudden they become less competitive. So all these companies, whether it be in his portfolio, so let's look at Google. He said, okay, Google trades at a cheap valuation. Well, there's a reason for that, right? The reason is that they're highly cyclical. They're selling advertisements and advertising, and advertising tends to be quite cyclical depending on the economy. And we've been concerned about Google because we started watching them launch with a flop their AIs, their AI model. And we're like, wow, they're really behind Microsoft. Microsoft is going to eat their lunch, and there's a huge risk here. So we've actually tried to reduce our exposure to Google over probably a year ago. And we said, I don't know if they've got this. I mean, there are a bunch of lazy people there. They're not executing. They're not innovating. You want to own companies that innovate faster than the competition, and they're not. I haven't heard Gary talk about that, of why he owns Google. I also haven't heard him say, I don't believe in Tesla because I think that they're losing the race in autonomy, or I think that they're not, they're making cars and their cars are the only ones that are competitive in the market, and they keep bringing down the prices. What he does talk about is, well, their margins are coming down, and they went from 30% gross margins, 25 to below 20. And I think next quarter, maybe they're going to come in lower or higher. Here's how many cars they're going to sell. In my view, and Gary's far more experienced than I am, and my hat goes off to what he's done for building a wealth management firm. But that's the difference. Is I'm looking at the company and what they're actually delivering as a product instead of just focusing on next quarter's earnings, because eventually these things are going to change, and they're going to change rapidly. And the same things, he didn't have a huge position in NVIDIA, so we're not going to call him a genius, or in terms of wealth management. But nobody could see that one coming, and they're still getting caught offside on that. So I think that's a great example. So I don't know, Herbert, if I'm explaining myself properly, but he's just not looking at the fundamentals of the business. Is the business executing? Everybody in most people in these circles sort of talk about what they're doing right. Come on here and say what they're not doing right, and I'll listen, and I'll do my own analysis of it. And I read the analyst reports that have a price target of $100 on the stock, and I'll read it and I'll be like, does it make any sense? Like, no, it doesn't. I have clients calling and saying, they're not selling as many EVs, and what about these other companies selling EVs? And we hear The Asians are coming, and we hear the Ford is selling EVs. I'm like, did you even know that they lose $50,000 to $100,000 on a car? Like, and they go, no, I didn't know that. Until I can see another car company making a car with these kinds of profits, and they keep bringing down the cost, I don't see competition coming, and I haven't for a long time. And so far on the stock, we've all been wrong because we've lost a lot of money on the stock price. But I don't think we're wrong on the fundamentals. The fundamentals, what we're looking at and we're tracking, is actual, right? The actual business, what they're doing. And even Jensen Huang came on the other day with a interesting news. Like, these are the only company in the world that is doing, this properly. Real world, artificial intelligence, autonomous driving. Sorry, Herbert, you got me ranting.
Oh, I love it. No, we love it. Thank you so much. It sounds like what we need to do is hold a space where we invite Gary, let him defend himself. A lot of things you said is things that many of us retail investors have been saying, but we've always said that, well, there's a difference, right? We're retail. He's a portfolio manager, institutional investor. I guess the question I've got now is maybe you as a portfolio manager still think very differently than an institutional analyst. Maybe you don't look at the quarters, but they do, and because they have their price targets, they have those things. Maybe you can explain what's the difference between a portfolio manager and an institutional analyst.
It's possible, but I think if I go back 10 years ago and we were trying to define the way that we do business, or 15 years ago, and we said, how are we going to run our portfolios, is we recognize where is our strong suit, and we need to stay in our zone of competence. And for a Wayne Gretzky analogy up in Canada, we've always said we want to go to where the puck is going, not to where it is. And our only advantage is if we can identify where businesses are going to be in the next 5 years and beyond. And that's where we try to play. That's our zone of confidence. Where do we think this business is going to be? Not everybody does that, but that's where we feel that we can be competitive. We're not going to compete on quant models, and that's the thing today. We're not going to compete with hedge funds. We're not going to compete with day traders. There's so many areas that we just don't have the compute, don't have the resources, the manpower. But I think that between my brother and I, and we're the portfolio managers, we spend a lot of time researching on trying to find out what's the difference between a good company and a great company, try to identify those companies, and then try to focus on, is that company continuing to be great, and let's invest in that and make sure we're paying a fair price. So we have zoned in, this is the way that we're going to run our portfolios and run our business, identify companies. But I think that's the only way for us to compete in a market with massive resources and compute and quant training and AI models. We just can't compete there. But I think that this is an area that we can compete, trying to identify which companies are great versus good, and try and stay ahead of that. So that just happens to be the zone that we're playing, and we try to stay there.
Okay. And then the 300,000 shares that you manage for these wealthy families, are you able to vote on their behalf for this upcoming shareholder meeting, or are you communicating to them to get them to do the voting?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Herbert. we can, and we have. So we have voted all of our shares. And because we're discretionary portfolio managers, our clients have our portfolios in their accounts. They own the securities, but they don't have the discretion to decide how many shares they own. We just run our portfolios, and they're held in separately managed accounts. So it's pretty simple. And yes, it's the first time actually we've gone out and voted for the shares that we represent for clients. And I would have to say that that's thanks to you and Tesla Boomer Mama, Jeff, all you guys have really, laid it out and said, hey guys, get off your ass and go vote. And my brother and I have said, yeah, we got to do this because it's the least we can do.
Thank you so much, Simon. Appreciate you. I will be interviewing Simon this week, and we'll drop that one-on-one interview this weekend. So watch out for that. But really nice to hear a fresh voice, somebody who also is a portfolio manager like the others that we've had for so long representing. But you have a different perspective, and it will be great to really eke out what is the difference between you and the others. Appreciate that. Let's bring up Sagittarius.
Yeah, I'm afraid that my question might not be too relevant because we switched topic in the meantime. I had a questions for Omar when he was talking about the integrations of large language model like Grok with FSD. Can I still ask it? I don't want to change the topic.
It's
Actually.
okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, right. So we know that at some point Optimus will be exposed to a vast amount of data. My questions for Omar: how do you think that this can be helpful for, I would say, FSD?
I think that Optimus is essentially a harder version of the self-driving problem. It's less constrained. So I definitely think that in trying to solve that, they'll probably make a lot of discoveries along the way that'll be useful for self-driving. I think they'll get a lot of training data from a different perspective than what the car sees. And really, as we look into the future, I see the model that powers the car and the model that powers the robot kind of converging. They'll have pretty similar functionality. Both of them take images in and control the vehicle or the robot. So they kind of really go hand in hand, the robot model and the car model.
How about the other way around, Omar? The FSD being able to power the robot. Can you explain a little bit about that, right? Real world, being able to understand its landscape and environment.
FSD being able to power the robot. I mean, the robot's going to have its own perception system and its own neural nets that are similar to the FSD nets in some way from a perception stack level. But obviously, it'll be geared towards moving many more joints on the robot compared to the car, which really only has, one or two motors.
Okay, thank you. So let's bring up Andre. Thank you, Sagittarius. Okay, you're on, Andrea.
Hey guys, thanks for having me up here. I think I have a similar kind of point question to the whole LLM with the Grok and FSD. So I hope that we're not going to diving too far of this change of topic. So do you mind if I keep going in that subject?
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I think what Elon's trying to do with the XAI is actually focus on more of the LLM and solving the reasoning and the logic and the physics stack, something that is not really vital to FSD, right? For FSD, a lot of it is computer vision and obviously the neural nets around that, but you don't necessarily, the requirement of language processing and reasoning is not super huge requirement. Now, Tesla is not going to go into the business of offering LLMs as a service like OpenAI is doing through ChatGPT, but XAI could. And the benefit factors could be other Elon companies. You're talking about, obviously, X, Tesla, perhaps even, if Boring is operating its own network, then there's LLM and reasoning and kind of these agents integrated into that are separate of Tesla, and then SpaceX, and obviously whoever else in the market. So I think the separation is kind of the point I wanted to make when you guys were talking about it, is that there's a natural separation between what XAI is doing and Tesla's AI efforts, and they complement each other. And I think having XAI separate will allow Elon to attract more resources that are very not computer vision specialized, and still attract even more revenue and funnel and compete better than Tesla could independently. That was kind of the point, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it, and that's it.
Well, I'm not sure they're really that separated. If you think about it, I think it really is pretty core. Like a self-driving car, if a police officer stops traffic and talks to the car needs to be able to actually understand what the cop is saying and what their hand signals are saying and what their words are saying. It probably needs to be able to talk to the passengers in multiple languages. I think the robot needs to be able to talk to people, it needs to understand people. So there's no doubt that I think language is an important part. I don't think it's really that separated. I think increasingly it's kind of merging more and more and being unified with self-driving. Not so much today, because LLMs are larger models that run in the cloud and the self-driving models are smaller models that run on the device. But I think increasingly in the future they are going to merge more and more. But really, it just doesn't seem like Tesla can train a state-of-the-art LLM with the resources they have and spend billions of dollars on that and get a payback. They probably wouldn't have a model that's that differentiated. So I think they can use XAI's models for now. Maybe at some point they want to reevaluate and see if they can train their own, but I think they can kind of just borrow that language understanding from XAI or from another open model and build a product that's much higher level that incorporates language, but also lots of other features, vision, touch, gestures, moving the joints of the robot, and combines that into sort of a more powerful system that incorporates all of those things.
It's a good point. Yeah. Well,
Thanks.
thanks for having me
Yeah.
up here. I'm just going to drop to listening and just continue.
Thanks, Andre. So I want to ask the panel members earlier. I think Omar, somebody else said that version 13 is when we're going to see kind of a full integration of Grok into the cars. Who here thinks that on 8.8 you're going to see a Grok integration? I personally believe that that's what they'll have to show that it is part of a robotaxi experience is to be able to communicate to the car. So let's go down the panel here, Jeff.
Yeah, I've been saying this for months. I don't think you're gonna see the end product. I think you could see a preview of the beginning of like what they're thinking about and Grok integration. Both don't only think voice, also think the text on the display well and the context it'll have, and really the ability to make a Tesla robotaxi an experience, like a very differentiated experience. I think I think Grok and XAI. I think this is going to be one of the key things that makes it a differentiated experience.
Okay, Omar.
Yeah, I think that we could see a speech demo at the 8.8 event. It's possible. I don't know for sure. Like I said, Green has seen some code in the firmware releases that hint that there's a Tesla voice assistant being developed. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that at some point, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's using Grok. I'd be surprised if it's using anything else.
Yep. And then Warren.
I'll be contrarian. I think the event will be more about the vehicle and maybe the manufacturing process for the vehicle. What we've seen of the robotaxi service was it was done by phone. We've seen images of like the phone app. So my gut would be that it's not going to be. Maybe there'll be a demo, maybe not, but I don't think that's kind of gimmicky for what I think they're trying to achieve. But who knows?
I don't know, Warren. Maybe a Model 3 Highland might just show up and you could order one. Okay, Sat, your turn.
I do agree with Warren that this is primarily going to be about the vehicle. It's a vehicle unveil. But, they could have a voice assistant as part of the softer features they demo. Who knows?
Be a one more thing kind of thing.
Okay, Sat, are you there? If not, Emmett.
Sat, please go after me. I think it's on the roadmap. I could easily see them saying, "Hey, Grok, drive the cyber, whatever the name is, up on stage for us." But whether they can pull it off in time, I think that's a different question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Simon.
Yeah, just your point, Emmett. I think that they could pull it off on a demo. I just wonder if it's going to work in the real world. But even the demo, and then if we could actually see it work in our own cars and in the real world, it'd blow my mind. I mean, just hearing, my mind is starting to process this, which you guys brought up this evening in terms of integrating Grok and the voice. I'm just still processing, but that would be just amazing if they could get it really, really good, dial it in, like we're seeing in the large language models today, and then they could integrate that into the Tesla and the robotaxi, like next level. So that would be really cool.
Go ahead, Warren.
Yeah, I just wonder if we're going to see Cybercab pull up on the stage and then Optimus gets out. And then if you wanted to incorporate Grok, then Optimus turns to the car and says, close the door. And the car says, yes, sir, and closes the door. I think in reality, Optimus will communicate with the car, by Bluetooth rather than by voice. But hey, there's an idea.
Are we all expecting Falcon wings on this car?
I'm not. I think that what they said in the earnings call, 2 or 3 earnings calls ago, was that it was very utilitarian. There was concerns about how difficult it would be to ramp the robo-taxi vehicle, and they were laughing about, how difficult Cybertruck was and how much easier the next gen vehicle is going to be. So, and we know historically the Falcon Wing doors have been a major pain in the ass. That's not a cost saving.
But Elon, he likes to make things complicated once in a while, right? Just to make a statement.
Well, I think if there's a user benefit like ease of ingress, which there is, it may not have to articulate on multiple hinges. Maybe it's one hinge, something simplified, but it's possible. But I think it's really going to be focused on something that looks like it's from the future, but it's got the cost structure that can actually deliver on mass scale. And I think that's what's missing when you if you were to do a proper competitive analysis. I hear other people talk about other robo taxis, but if they were to actually like sit down, make a spreadsheet, and talk about all the different factors that are involved in putting out a robo taxi service, one of the boxes that won't be checked for the competition is a cost structure that's scalable. So I think they will show the hardware, and I think there will be an emphasis on that this thing looks like it's from the future and it's got a cost structure that can scale.
Herbert, scissor doors make a lot more sense than Falcon Wing doors, but I like your idea about having easy ingress and egress.
Okay, yeah, so that's a separate idea. I still think that the easiest doors are the minivan doors, the sliding doors. Simple as
Minivan doors, that's absolutely what we need.
It's so gonna be so cool, Omar. It'll be so cool. Trust me.
I hope Franz is listening into space.
It's not cool, but it will work well.
That's what I'm saying. So you weren't making fun of me. Okay, thank you.
No, I'm serious. Yeah, I agree. Minivan doors.
I'm serious too. I think it's terrible. I think I hope he's listening to space for what not to do.
We should hear from Amy. She hasn't chimed in yet.
I know. Okay, I was going to invite Amy up.
One thing that you see from Waymo is that they don't have automatic doors. And then when you don't shut the door, they just kind of yell at you and they go, hey, shut the door, shut the door. So you can definitely avoid that with minivan doors.
Okay, go ahead, Warren, before we ask Amy.
Yeah, I just want to say the best door is no door, but we haven't talked about 4-seater versus 2-seater. I don't know if you want to go there. I say it's going to be a 4-seater, and that's contrarian.
I've been saying 4-seater too. I don't understand the people who say 2. It's just it's going to cost you just the same to have a 4-seater. Why not go with that? Okay, why don't we ask Amy first, and then we'll come back.
It's looking like a 2-seater based on some of the shots they showed us, right?
I think they're going to show a couple of vehicles. So there you go. There's going to be a 2-seater and a 4-seater.
I'll just say one more quick thing. Sorry, Amy, just one quick thing, and I'm going to turn it over to you. If they do multiple vehicles, my prediction is a 2-seater and a van. So they almost like skip over.
Oh, Jeff, are you talking about a minivan with minivan doors, maybe?
No, not minivan doors. So sorry, Amy. Go ahead.
Amy, go ahead.
Amy, Amy, please talk about anything you want to that we've talked about or something.
Okay, I was just going to say, do you want me to comment on the doors or what? Actually, I had a question about FSD. Do we expect, anybody know whether we're going to get a reroute feature with 12.4?
A reroute feature?
You know, for example, like if you miss a turn, like it couldn't get over to make the left-hand turn because of traffic.
Okay. And then, I mean, you can tap on the screen right now. There's a few alternate routes that show up. What are you looking for it to add?
Well, I thought it could do it automatically instead of, you know, sometimes what it does is the strategy, it jumps to the head of a queue of cars in order to be able to get over. And sometimes that works, but other times it's not going to work. And I was thinking it's got all the information. It could reroute because it knows its current location, and then it can go to the destination. It can just recalculate the route. But I mean, it sounds like no, we don't really expect that in the next release, right?
Well, I don't know about the next release, but it sounds like kind of a good idea. So, what you're saying essentially is, and I've seen this sometimes where it's not able to make the turn that it needs to make, so I tap on the screen to change the route. You're right, it should be able to figure that out itself, that it needs to reroute itself. So, I'm sure it'll start doing that eventually. It's a good idea.
There's a setting in the navigation menu that's reroute to save time.
This is a little
But
different. She's talking about when you can't make the turn or something like that.
Yeah, it's like a dynamic rerouting. It would have to realize that it can actually complete the route from what lane it's in, for example.
Yeah, gotcha. Makes sense.
I mean, didn't they already demo or somebody showed? Wasn't it Chuck Cook, where the car is looking for a parking spot. So if it can't find the parking spot, it'll just keep going around and around until it finds one. So it is dynamically rerouting.
I think what she's saying is it needs to know when to give up. And she's right. So, you know, just a future idea. I think they'll incorporate it eventually.
Now, as far as the comment about integrating Grok, I have been really excited ever since, the model started. I don't know when this happened in version 11. It started to talk to us through the display. Does anybody remember when that started?
Yeah, I think it was like V10 or V11, maybe V11.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's already got some of the basic functionality there. All it needs is to add Grok in when it's ready. So it's going to be so cool when that happens.
Yeah, my wife just recently discovered Open Glove Box, and she loves it. She puts her sunglasses there, sits down, and she says, "Open Glove Box," and she just appreciates it so much. It's just little things like this that once people figure out that they can do something, and it's just so much easier.
I've been playing with the parking lately, and it's really cool the way you can just pick a parking space and have it just pull in. I never back into a parking space. I'm not good at it. And you can have it do it. It's great.
We're still kind of on like 10-year-old, voice to like we've been like in mobile, like we've been doing voice prompts, for a while to like take you to this app or that app. What we need is we need context, and we need the latency to be gone, to be reduced dramatically, like almost like it's imperceivable. And then basically everything that's got a control in the vehicle can be controlled via voice. Because right now there's things that I'd like to be able to control, or it gets confused, like, hey, make the right side of the car this temperature, or just there's other examples of things that just aren't. Everything that's got a control, we should be able to access it via this voice prompt, and it should have really minimal latency. And the error rate's got to be like, we're all just accustomed to like, pressing the voice button, saying something, and then like 20% of the time or more it didn't hear it, didn't understand it, or it does the wrong thing, and that error rate's got to go to like fractions of a percent. So so this,
Yeah.
to me, like this is like we're still on old technology. Like everything we see today is like super, super old technology, there's a ton of latency. And like, I think what we're going to see in the future, the language model and the way like Tesla has this thing designed from top to bottom, both with the software stack and the hardware stack to reduce that latency. I think a Tesla vehicle is going to be something very special.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's essentially going to have to get better at communicating than an average human driver. And you're probably going to have this thing able to converse in virtually every language on the planet, talk to people, understand what they need. You can kind of see this in the Waymo cars today. One of the things that's really interesting, Amy mentioned the little text message on the screen that explains what the model is doing, like stopping for the stop sign or something like that. In the Waymo, when it brakes or does something unexpected or it's stopping, it'll often explain itself in English. So they'll say, for example, waiting for intersection to clear or waiting for pedestrian to cross the crosswalk. So I think that is actually an important component. I don't think necessarily people will need everything explained to them long term, but I think it is important to have the car able to communicate with the customer, to be able to explain what it's doing, help build confidence in the system. And that's really going to be a core tenet of the system. So getting a language model knocked out is actually a really important part of the checklist that you want before you can really take robotaxi to global mass scale.
Right. Okay. So thank you for that, Omar. We're about 5 minutes. We're going to close the space down. So we're going to do a speed round on the questions. So, no, no War and Peace intro, just get like right into it and, or put your comment or your question out and we'll try to get to it. And then please, follow the Cyberbulls host. The bull gets very mad or upset if he doesn't get a follow. So follow the host, follow the co-host, the speakers. People put time in to kind of think through these concepts, talk through it, and the speakers have all been just wonderful. So please take time to do that. Let's go to Tesla Yoda.
Hey, question there is if voice is going to be a key interface and sort of interacting multimodal with vision, i.e. the cameras, can a language model fit inside the Tesla car inference computer locally?
Yes, but it won't be as powerful as one that's running on the server. So you'll probably have a combination of both. Something running on the server with a fallback model that can run locally on the car's inference computer.
And I find it interesting too, just this work that's going on. I know it's a different company, but just the Starlink work, the texting, the video call features, everything. Like there's this whole kind of like parallel thing happening. I just wonder at some point, do you have that integration occur where you've got the performance, where that performance is, good enough to basically be better than by the way, so everybody knows, like a 5G connection is super low latency and performs really well. So it's got a mountain to climb. But anyway, just I love the fact that like all these things are kind of happening, and there could be some convergence.
Yeah, and the current Tesla cars can actually connect to the Starlink direct-to-cell satellite. So if they're out in the middle of nowhere and have no signal,
Yeah,
SpaceX can connect them. That's going to be super useful for robotaxi.
agreed.
I think that
Agreed. Just
we'll see more capability in hardware 5 for doing this kind of doing that kind of inference. The large language model or language response might be something that hardware 3 is not optimized for. Hardware 4 might not have it baked in, but hardware 5 almost certainly will.
and I think Elon just said hardware 5 in vehicles end of next year, end of 2025, which interesting.
So you mean 2026?
Yeah, there you go. Maybe we'll see. Sunchit.
Yeah, since we've been talking about like voice inputs and everything, what do you guys think the feature? What do you all think the feature that allows us to send in a voice message, like a 10-second voice message, whenever you intervene? What do you think Tesla is using those messages for? I mean, they could obviously like transcribe those messages and kind of label the intervention there, but I'm not sure what else are they doing with that. Any thoughts?
Well, the official story is that they are transcribing it into text and then storing it into a database that allows them to categorize complaints by, what people are saying and figure out what issues need to be focused on. But I also heard that if some of the interns ship bad code, they torture them by playing all the voice messages while they sleep.
Yeah, I think on top of that, if you guys are familiar with the idea of setting up a RAG infrastructure for AI, some of these interventions whereby the driver is noting something that is very localized can be stored later on for essentially very location-specific nuances that can be used to inform a feature vehicle that drives near that same place again.
Great stuff. So hey, anyway, this was a wonderful space. I know I've tried to connect a few more speakers, but it looks like we're kind of getting to that time. Appreciate all the questions, appreciate all the speakers, all the listeners. I think we had a great discussion all the way from the XAI raise to the how the two companies could be working together to kind of the Tesla FSD going to 12.4. What's the robotaxi event going to have? What could we see in the robotaxi itself? And just a lot of conversations about Grok and the integration of it as well. So really cool discussion. We have this discussion on various topics of kind of the topics of the week every Tuesday at 5 Central, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. Please join us again weekly. And we have, again, great speakers and a good set of hosts to support the conversation. So thank you for the time, and we'll speak again soon. Have a great evening, everyone.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.